as soon as God thinks it, it is. So if you would like to be more godlike, decrease the amount of time between when you think something and act on it. I try to really see every person and say, okay, where's the God in this person? Where's where's the God in my dad, right? Where's the God in my mom? Where's the God in people who I might not want to see the God in? Courage is this wonderful thing where it's like the first step, the first act towards you're marching down. You're saying, okay, I no longer stand for the way I've been treating myself, and I have the courage to act differently. I mean, that is a really tremendous thing, and not something to take for granted. The courage to be different is the courage to act different. That's where love begins. And it's the repeated act of doing something different that allows you to actually love yourself.
Hello friends, I have an amazing episode for you today. This is a recording of a workshop from my private community, the God Mode Mastermind, which you can find at unlockgodmode.org. And in this workshop, I had the pleasure of interviewing Danny Miranda on consciousness, God, spirit. We dove into truth, love, manifestation, relationships with partners, relationships with parents. This was a very deep, vulnerable, and potent workshop. I'm delighted to be able to share it with you on this podcast. Enjoy this episode and let me know what you think of it. So guys, I want to welcome you to my workshop with Danny Miranda. Danny is a consciousness explorer, a writer, a retreat leader, and the host of the Danny Miranda Podcast. I wanted to bring Danny to the God Mode Mastermind to dive into his relationship with God, his spiritual path, how we can uplevel our frequency and our consciousness, what daily practices can keep us aligned with our highest self, and how we can tap into self-love and courage when we need it most. So if during this conversation you have any questions for Danny, put them in the chat. We'll also have a Q&A at the end of the call. Danny, I want to welcome you again officially to the God Mode Mastermind. Thank you so much for joining me and joining all of us. Can you introduce yourself a little bit for those that don't know you and tell us what's most exciting for you right now in your life?
Everything you just mentioned. I mean, like I've literally, I don't know if you can see like a tear come to my eye, but I'm just like, that is like, you just described all of my favorite topics. I'm just so happy to be here. Like, this is really what I live for. Thinking about what you just described and living it to the best of my ability. And yeah, I just feel really touched to be here, and I'm grateful for it. I mean, how the journey kind of unfolded for me was I was, I got everything I wanted. I was 24 years old. I was living out in San Diego, making a bunch of money, living with my friends, partying a bunch, and realizing, oh my God, I thought I wanted this my whole life, and I actually don't. And what do I do now? And I started to meditate, and I did 75 hard, this program where for 75 days straight, you just drink a gallon of water, you do 2 workouts, you read 10 pages of a book, you take a progress picture, and you follow a diet, which I'm on actually in this moment as well. But it was really the meditation piece that unlocked so many synchronicities so quickly that I was like, what is happening here? And how have I never seen this before? And what's going on? I mean, it was really wild. Like, one of them was that I decided I wanted to be a personal trainer. And so I walked into the gym closest to my house, and the guy that owns the gym is doing 75 hard. And this is in 2019 when no one knew what the program was. So I was like, what is happening? Another is like, I send a DM to all my favorite creators online, and I get on the phone with one of them, and we have a 20-minute conversation, and I'm like, wow, like this is the type of guy I want to be around. I go to a coffee shop the next day. An older woman stares me in the eyes, is like, hey, I feel called to talk to you. She starts telling me about her church and how I need to come to her church. I say, that sounds great. Like, thank you for inviting me. She's like, you have to come because there's this guy who spoke there yesterday or last week, and you would love him. And it was the guy that I was on the phone with the day before.
Oh my God.
And none of this had ever happened to me. Like, synchronicities that were so connected, but it was, I started meditating, and instantly within a month, it was like, I saw the code, and it felt like, wow, I'm really in the perfect place at the perfect time. And so, yeah, that's kind of a little bit about my story and my journey. And it's been a deepening of that over the years, over the past 5 years, and just all coming to new realizations, new learnings every day about myself and the world around me. And I'm just grateful to be here.
Wow. Wow. What a story, man. When you went to church the next day, what happened there?
So this is one of the biggest regrets of my entire life. The fact that I didn't go to church. I had an awful stomach bug. And I remember so vividly thinking to myself, like, I could go to church right now, but I'm scared. I'm scared for what this portal is going to open up for me.
Whoa, okay.
Because I know, like, this is I'd never been to church before. I grew up Jewish, but kind of not really religious at all. And it seemed too out there. And I didn't trust enough. And I didn't have James here. I didn't have somebody to guide me or be like, yo, like, go to church. Like, and it really does help when you have other people on the path. I had no one. I mean, Tej, who was a great friend of mine, but I just didn't trust, honestly, myself. And it's one of my big regrets in my entire life.
So what was the next milestone, the next moment in that journey for you that opened up for you?
I would say it was probably meditating for 60 minutes a day. When I started meditating for 60 minutes a day, well, first of all, I meditated for 90 days straight. And when I meditated for 90 days straight, I stopped at a red light and I was driving a car for the first time since I started meditating. And I'm stopped and I'm like, please be green, be green, be green, be green. And it's a red light and I see my mind go crazy. And I'm like, what is that? Why is my mind going crazy? And I was like, oh my God, I've been doing that every time I've stopped at a red light. Like, what is going, like, the meditation gave me the awareness. And then when you gain awareness, I think looking back on it, I got scared of it. I stopped meditating for months. I became depressed. I went into this deep darkness. And then I come out of it on the other side and I start meditating again. And yeah, I went even deeper and I was like, okay, now I have the trust. I mean, have you ever had like an opening like that? I mean, I've never really told a story like this. And it's clear to me that I had an opening and then I got scared of it. And then I went back and then I had another opening and then you get scared. Like, does that resonate with you as well?
Absolutely.
As well as people listening or watching?
It also happens in other areas like money, where you get this uptick and then you're like, whoa, can I hold this frequency? And then your own doubts bring you back to a previous level.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like really having people hold you in that space. I found it so important. That's why this community is probably so special.
How do you, like you mentioned people, would that be your advice for anyone who wants to hold that portal and keep themselves open to the synchronicities, the magic, and not shrink back into the previous version of their life?
Yeah, I think having people there is the most important thing when it's new and it's fresh. And also to realize that the person that you are going to become is going to be different than the person you were. And that is going to force you to step into a new version of yourself. And it's almost like some moments of synchronicities are like almost entering into a new grade in school or you go from middle school to high school and you're like, wait, can I handle all this new attention and all this new? And I feel like you get the choice of, do I want to step into that or not?
What do you feel you're stepping into these days?
So what happened was I had I had a lot of struggles with my dad growing up. I felt like he didn't understand me emotionally. And it was always one thing I wanted to change about him or make him different in some way. And in January of this year, I had an amazing awareness of it. And I completely forgave him and wiped the slate clean. And then I've really felt such peace and love towards him. And then what's happened recently in the past, I don't know, let's call it 3-6 months, I felt me shrivel back to the old version. And I feel me deepening that love for him now and deepening our connection. And so I think that's the place where I've went, expanded, contracted, and now trying to expand and hold what I expanded into back in January and February.
What was the forgiveness process for you, for someone, because I'm sure there's a lot of people on this call, myself included, who have some sort of resentments or some sort of things around parents still.
Yeah.
And of course, like logically, I know that the right thing to do is to forgive everything and
Yeah.
take full responsibility and just let it go.
Yeah.
Like you said, sometimes I feel that expansion, and then like on a mushroom trip, another layer will come up, and I'm like, oh my God, it's still there. There's still this thing that I'm holding against someone, and it's just like it's driving me crazy. And I'm curious, how do you recommend someone forgive their parents completely and really feel into that love?
Yeah. So I'll tell you what I did back in January, and I'll tell you what my current perspective is on it. My current perspective is it is really important to understand the role that each of you are playing in each other's lives. Meaning, that is a pattern. My dad and my pattern, we are playing out a pattern that my dad likely played out with his dad, and his dad likely played out with his dad. And I cannot diagnose that because I don't know, because I have been scared to ask. And so where there's understanding, there's forgiveness. And what I think I might be representing to my dad, I might be representing someone. It could be his dad. It could be his brother. It could be a friend from high school he was super close to and then cut him off. And so who am I representing to him?
Wow.
And I think and so I want to understand him better. I'm seeing him over this weekend with my mom, very excited about, because I want to understand what role am I playing in his life, and who did he have similar relationships with as me? Because that is creating our dynamic in some way. And I think we're all doing this. Like everybody is creating a dynamic that also existed above and above and above and above. And we just get so scared. We don't actually ask. We don't actually understand because we have that resentment, because we don't want to know, because knowing is responsibility, and responsibility means change.
Wow. When you have these conversations with your dad, is he able to go as deep with you as you want to go?
No. And I don't know. Well, the God's honest truth is I don't know. And part of the reason why I don't or haven't is because I'm like, he can't go as deep as me. And he won't get me. He won't see me. He won't understand. And, one thing I've realized in all this is how much I've created the image of who he is and what he means and how it's not actually accurate. And, to like make it practical, one example of this was one of the things that gets me triggered is when he asks about finances and tries to manage them. And I'd really just had this moment on the call with him in the last week of just letting go of my grip of that. And it was in particular when he told me, hey, part of the reason why I want to talk to you about your finances is because I just want to hear your voice every week. And I would never expect him to say that. I would never expect him to really feel that. And wow is right, Isla. And I would say, no, he doesn't understand me. He doesn't get me. He doesn't really want to meet me with love. He just wants control and power. And that's what he's doing this all for. That's why he wants to see my finances. And in truth, he really just wanted to hear my voice. And maybe he does want control in some way, but he really just wants to hear my voice. And so that is important to note. And in that moment, something shifted because his dad didn't talk to him that way. Right. And if I just had such warmth when I heard that. And I think that's available for us all, right? To look at and to allow our family to show up not as our image, but as the truth.
And it reminds me of what you said to me once is, what is the question behind the question?
Yeah.
Right. So when
Yeah.
he's calling you and it seems like he's wanting control, but what is behind that? And it's
That's right.
so deep when you actually realize the truth.
That's right. That's right. And it's really powerful, man. And um, it's so special to think, I really genuinely believed in January or February of this year. It's like, I solved this. This is complete. Like, I'm good with my dad. And it's so interesting how it was in that moment. And then it contracts. And then it expands again. And it's really beautiful to witness. And I think everybody has had situations, friendships, parents, sisters, brothers who you see the relationship expand and contract almost like a heartbeat, almost like a breath. And it's really cool to witness that and be a part of that whole thing.
Do you ever get frustrated when the contraction is happening? And how do you move through that?
Definitely. I'm a human being. And the contraction is almost like you losing your breath, right? Like you feel so expansive and then to come back of like, oh, but it's an important part of the process. And I think, going back to just having people in your corner who love you, who trust you, who can be there with you. It's not always going to be expansion, and I'm grateful I got a chance to illustrate that in the beginning of this call, right? In this world of synchronicities and godlike connections and opening up to God and love, it's like expand, expand, expand. There's also contraction, and that's part of it too, and that's okay, right? And you have to be able to hold the expansion that you reach. And this contraction with my dad is going to allow us to expand even deeper than we got in January and February.
It feels to me like it's the sort of the 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So you never contract to the original state you were in. You're always more expanded, even in the contraction.
Yeah, because but that's not how it felt. I mean, that might be true, but that's not how it felt. In the moment, it was like, we're just not on good terms. We're just not going to talk as much. And it's so beautiful to be able to grow with a parent, to be able to grow with a partner, to be able to grow with all these, but sometimes they're not wanting to, right? And it's on us, I believe, to find the love in our heart for that person, regardless of if they can't meet us there. And that has been a really important piece. And I wrote a letter to my dad, going back to the January piece of it, that really, really made me feel complete with it in that moment, was writing a letter to him, but the opposite of the way, all the things I was holding against him. So what are all the reasons I'm for him? And what are all the reasons I love him? And to me, that completed something. And it's often when I tell people who talk about their heroes to me and talk about, okay, I really admire this person so much, I put them on a pedestal. No one will say that, but that idea, it's like, okay, now my advice to you is to find something or some things that you disagree with that person about, that are not in alignment with you. And that will help remove them and bring them down. For my dad, I had him down. And so I needed to figure out ways to balance him out in that moment. Yes. And so, yeah, that's been my process. And that's not widespread to everyone, as Sarah mentions here. And yeah, it's that's been my journey.
Can you run us through your meditation process, how it originally began and created synchronicities, and maybe the version that you're doing now? That's, I think, 60 minutes every single day.
It was, yes, it definitely was 60 minutes a day. It's not anymore. The version that built all these synchronicities was literally just meditating 20 minutes in the morning every day. Like that's it. It wasn't any There wasn't any special thing. It was, I never looked at my thoughts before in my entire life. There were moments where I'd been to therapists a few times. Um, and those were always helpful where I got a chance to look at my thoughts. But 20 minutes in the morning is what is all I needed in that moment, in that season of my life. Um,
What is the process
Today,
like?
the process for me was always going for the process, James. You love the process. I love that. So I would literally get out of bed and I would put a pillow on the wall, put a blanket over me, set the timer, set a kitchen timer for 20 minutes, and literally just watch whatever came up that day. That was the process for how I meditated. Today, it's very much a part of my life. And so today I had a run club. And so what we do at the run club is we run 4 miles and then we meditate in a circle 15 minutes. It's torrential downpour raining and everyone's meditating there. So it's beautiful, just sitting with their thoughts. And then after it's over, I'm asking each person, what's the one word you want to focus on for the rest of the day? And that's kind of what we did. And then I had a bunch of calls today. And then after the calls or in the middle of two, I meditated and just sat outside for 45 minutes, set the timer and just be. Um, yeah, that's and one process that I like that you can take that I've been doing since the book Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends On. I'm reading that right now. Doing the inhale. I love myself. And exhale, witness whatever comes up. So inhale, I love myself. Exhale. Could be thank you. It could be I don't believe you. It could be yes. Could be a word, right? There are a million things that could pop up, but it's cool to look at the difference of the exhale and the inhale and just let the the inhale be I love you, I love myself, and the exhale be whatever arises. And it will point you to some place.
Can you run us through a minute of that just to
I
see
would
if
love that. Yeah.
experience? This will be amazing.
I've never guided anyone through this, so pardon my rookie behavior. But yeah, just take a moment to close your eyes and you're gonna inhale for 3 seconds and repeat, I love myself. And exhale. Inhale, I love myself. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. I love myself. Exhale. I love myself. Inhale. Exhale. One more. Inhale. I love myself.
Felt the emotion of that.
Yeah, it's powerful. What came up for you?
Just this deepening of the connection to myself. And I just felt emotion welling up.
It, it's yeah, it's powerful. A friend of mine sent me a a text saying, I'm so grateful you had the vulnerability to share that practice on one of the videos that I recorded. And to me, it's like that's just who I am, right? And it's not, and I feel the emotional connection. I appreciate it, but it's not, there's nothing to hide there in that practice. There's no emotion you need to hide. So you love yourself, like that's great. Like there's nothing to be ashamed of.
That's one of the things I most admire in you is your presence and your vulnerability, your ability to share from the heart. And it feels like you never feel blocked in being vulnerable. I don't know if that's accurate, but I'd love to hear how for you has it been to be vulnerable, and what can you advise others to step into their vulnerability and show more layers of themselves without hiding, without feeling ashamed of being too, I don't know, whatever it is.
Yeah, I appreciate the question and the recognition. It's been a deepening of a process. Like this whole thing has been a process to get to this point. For example, uh, 5 years ago, before I started meditating, I went under the name Danny Roars on Twitter. Like I had a pen name. And the reason why I had a pen name is because I was scared to be seen by my classmates. Now you go to, I'm sharing I love myself and being completely comfortable saying that and talking about the deepest parts of myself to others. It's like, yeah, there's been a transformation that's taken place. And what I continue to do is just take one step in the direction of greater and greater truth. And, Danny Roars was the 2018 version of myself. And then in 2020, I start the podcast. And before I started the podcast, I changed my name on Twitter from Danny Roars to Danny Miranda. But a podcast and the way that I did a podcast was also hiding in some sense because I get to ask the questions to you and I don't get to be seen. And it's interesting, like how that happens, because some people could say, oh, the Danny Miranda podcast, you're putting yourself out there. It's like, yeah, but I'm also not actually, there's no skin in the game. I just have to ask the questions and I love asking the questions and it's easy for me. So I don't really have to give the truth of who I am. And so it's been uncovering and uncovering. And it's not until 4 years later, after starting the podcast, can I record a video of myself. The podcast started in audio only, so no face in that. And it's 4 years later and thousands of pieces of content where I can look at the camera and just press record and just say the truth of how I'm feeling that day. Now, that's a journey, right? I just summed it up in a paragraph. And there were many moments of expansion and contraction in that. And I think that what you need to do is you have to ask yourself, what is the step right now that I'm being called to expand into? And what am I being called to share that I'm uncomfortable to share? Right? And it helps to have people in your circle, inner circle, you talk to about it and they accept and love you. And then, okay, you expand a little deeper. Like, okay, can I tell a friend about this? Can I tell an acquaintance? Then can I tell a stranger? Can I tell someone from high school? Then can I tell the world? Right? Some of these things are not something you just come online with right away. You have to sit with it. Someone has to sit with you and let you know it's okay for you to be you. Someone has to believe in you oftentimes before you believe in yourself. That's just how this world works. And yeah, I think it's okay. If you're in that process of being scared to share online, like I get it. I completely get it. I've been there. I've wanted to hide. And I'm sure there'll be a deepening of this because I can see the direction it's going. And I'm sure I'll be like, in 2024, you thought you were being vulnerable and real online? Like there's a deepening to wait to happen, but I'm looking forward to that journey.
There's layers to it. I so relate to that. So relate to that. And each year it's exciting to discover how much more comfortable I am in revealing more of myself. Is there any moments where you've been vulnerable with someone and you regretted it? Because I think that's one of the fears that people have is, oh, if I share something and it's not received in the way that I want it to be received, then I'm going to go back in my shell.
Yeah. I mean, nothing comes to mind initially, and I think that's a great question of things that and one thing that I was very scared to share was about my parents being wealthy. And it was so hard for me to own that fact, in part because I don't even know how much my parents themselves own it, right? And I felt the judgment of that and feeling that. Um, and I haven't really felt a lot of pushback, but I felt very scared to share that. And
You
I'm
didn't want
grateful I
to
did.
undermine your success and your own personal independence.
Correct. That's right. I was scared that people would view whatever success I achieved as irrelevant because of where it came from. So listen, and I don't think everyone needs to be vulnerable online and share the truth of who they are. I don't think it's for everyone. And there are very legitimate reasons to not. I mean, my friend, he's in crypto and he's like, well, you know, someone found out who I was and was stalking me. And I'm like, oh my God, like I'm doing this because I want to be comfortable in every room I walk into. Right. And there's levels of sharing that can make you uncomfortable to walk into rooms. I'm really doing this for, I think the greatest thing you can have in this lifetime is to be comfortable in your own skin. And the only thing that I'm trying to do is trying to live in that. So yeah, that it helps me to be open.
I think there was a tweet I read from you a couple months ago where you just said, just tell the truth.
Yeah,
I felt like you were in this season of just going straight at the truth. And that seemed to be like a very powerful process to uncover more of those layers and get comfortable in your skin.
yes, absolutely. Because there's so much we hide. There's so much we kind of there's so much I have kind of brushed under the rug, say I don't need to talk about that. I don't need to share that. I don't need to. And then when I do, what you gain when you tell the truth is connection. And that's what I love, is connecting with people and allowing myself to be seen so that I can connect with you. I mean, there's so many different ways we could have done this, right? If I'm telling you we're starting in and I'm giving you all the highlights from all the synchronicities and but because I was vulnerable and shared the truth of what happened in as much fullness as I could in that moment, I was like, listen, I, I've struggled with going up and going down. And that allows somebody who's gone up and gone down, aka everybody, to connect with me and to feel me because they know, oh, I'm also a human being on this human experience. And so when we say the truth, we get connection. And I think it's really important to keep that in mind because that's what you're fighting for when you tell the truth. And
I
if you
love it.
can't, and and if people are connecting with you based on a false version of reality, they're not actually connecting with you.
I was just about to say that it's the biggest trap, putting up this scaffolding that you think will make you safe, and then others start connecting with the scaffolding rather than the true nature of you, and you're just digging yourself deeper into a hole.
That's right. That's right. And we've all, I mean, I've been there, so many times just wanting to be part of the group or wanting to belong or wanting to, and it's like I'm just lying to myself, I'm just not honoring what I value. So it's interesting.
I want to circle back to God and ask you, how would you today define God for yourself?
The the easiest marker is love for
Mm.
me. And I don't know if they're actually one and the same, like one-to-one connection. I think Eckhart Tolle talks about in one of his books, like love, God is not love, but it's pretty damn close. It's close enough where I'm like, I'm going to surrender to this. And it's very difficult for me um, to take someone's insights into my being if I feel like they're not coming from love. And love, what does love mean, right? Love means um, to be in connection, right? And that starts with oneself. It's like, is this person in connection with themselves? And is this person becoming one with other people that they see, that they can, that they are in the same presence of? Are they doing their best to connect? Are they doing their best to love? I also think love is holding a standard for yourself that is in line with the person that you want to be. If you take it from a personal perspective, like love has many different meanings. And it's one of those things, you know it when you see it, right? You know when somebody who is loving themselves, you know when somebody is trying to love others. And from my experience, the extent to which I can love myself is equivalent to the extent that I can give love to others. I know people who can give love to others who don't have love for themselves, but it just hasn't worked that way in my own life.
For you, self-love has been probably one of the most important parts of your journey. Can you talk a bit about that and what might help others to connect deeper with themselves and love themselves more?
Yeah, I think reading the book "Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It" by Kamal Ravikant is an amazing place to start. I I love the seasons of my life where I have the mantra in my head of I love myself. I love myself. It's literally let that even if you don't believe it in the beginning, by the end of a month or two or three of doing that, your something will shift and something will change. And to make that the mantra, just to have that as the baseline belief, even if you're like, no, I don't believe that. No, I can't love myself. No, just see what you can to make that repetition and make that part of your being. Um, I would say doing the thing that you quote unquote know you should do, but that you're scared to do is part of the process for me of self-love. For me, that was 75 hard. Then it was like running a marathon on one day's notice. Then it was doing 75 hard again when I felt so down and out. Um, so I think everyone knows in this moment, if we're like, all right, after this call is over, do the thing that you've been putting off. Everyone would have one thing that just like pops up. They're like, okay, that is self-love to me.
Yeah, there's a quote from the book. It says, if it scares me, there's magic on the other side. And
Yeah. Yeah.
talk to me about how courage and love is connected and how we can use courage to go to the other side.
Yeah. Well, I think, David Hawkins has a great map, which I'm sure has been posted about here or in this group in some way, where he talks about how courage is the point that is where you're superseding the ego and superseding fear. And I think having courage is this wonderful thing where it's like the first step, the first act towards you're marching down. You're saying, okay, I no longer stand for the way I've been treating myself, and I have the courage to act differently. I mean, that is a really tremendous thing, and not something to take for granted. The courage to be different is the courage to act different. That's where love begins, and it's the repeated act of doing something different that allows you to actually love yourself.
Man, that's powerful. What are some daily practices that you use to connect deeper with your courage, with love, with God? How do you bring the presence of God into your day-to-day life?
I try to really see every person. I really try to see every person that I interact with and say, okay, where's the God in this person? Where's the God in my dad, right? Where's the God in my mom? Where's the God in people who I might not want to see the God in? And I think reminding myself of that question, where's the God in this person, has been helpful. Um, there's the practical, you can just sit, you can go to nature, you can eat foods that are real and godlike. I saw this great uh Alex Hormozy video today where he talked about how to channel God, and it was really interesting. Did you see this? So basically he said God is omnipotent, and as soon as God thinks it, it is. So if you would like to be more godlike, decrease the amount of time between when you think something and act on it.
Ooh, wow.
And I really liked, I've never heard that frame before,
That's awesome. That's
but
so cool.
it's really good.
It's bridging the practical personal growth with the spirituality.
Yeah. It's really good because, if the thing that you should do is after we get out of this call and there's like something you should do. And if you've been thinking about that thing for, an hour or a day, that's one thing. If you've been thinking about that thing for months or years, you're in a different level of despair in that area that is almost representative of a hell.
Yeah.
And if you can do it right away, if we end this call and you just do the thing that you should do right away, like you're acting more like a god. You're acting with more love towards yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that fascinating.
One of the lessons that comes to me on mushrooms is that all your power is in the present moment. And so bringing as much of that power to the present, extracting it from the past, not letting it disperse across thinking about the future, thinking about the past, but just bring it to what can I do now that will make the greatest difference, which seems linked to what you just said.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really, and I think meditation is the practice of how can we just get our attention back to present. Mm-hmm. And conversation for me is an amazing way. I look at a human being and I'm like, I'm present. I'm here. I'm with you. And everything else doesn't exist. And so I think that's a great tactic as well. Talk to people. You talk to people, you become present. I do at least.
Do you pray daily?
I don't, but I think that's an amazing thing to throw on my to-do list. I made a habit out of going outside after taking a shower at night and talking to God, praying. But I haven't been doing that over the past week for whatever reason. And this is a good reminder to do that again tonight.
One of the things that we talk a lot in the mastermind about is manifestation. That's what Unlock God Mode is all about. And I'm curious with your experiences with manifestation, intending something and receiving it, synchronicities. Can you talk about your journey with manifestation?
Absolutely. I mean, I wrote this letter to my wife, my future wife, on January 13th, 2024. And so funny that this is the first thing that comes to mind. And on January 27th, I met a woman who represented 98% of what I described in this letter. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm look how fast I am at manifesting. This is great. The 2% was obviously the 2% that comes back in the relationship later where you feel like, wow, this is actually not right. And, but how can I make this useful? I think writing a letter and holding true to it is actually one of the most powerful practices in the world. Writing a letter and holding true, because I think what happens inevitably when you write a letter or intend something is you will get an example of something that's very close, and you will get the option. Do you want this? And wanting it and having it can be an amazing experience. And it could also be not what is actually in your heart and what you intend to receive. So that's what came to mind initially.
This is so interesting. So if you would go back to that self in January, would you say pay attention to the 2%?
That is what the version of myself today would be aware of.
Yeah.
Where I'm very happy, genuinely, that I went through the experience that I went through. It's been very formative, and it was amazing to spend time with this woman. It's amazing to break up and amazing to like actually see myself in the depths of sorrow. And also going forward, I know that compromising on any of my desires compromising on it all.
Because God doesn't compromise.
Right. Right. Because exactly, you can have everything you want.
When you write this letter, is it from your present self to your future self? Is it the future self describing it as if it's in the past? What is the technique that you would use for writing this letter?
I don't know. Let's see what was the technique that I used? Letter to future wife.
I love how this just is already ready on your computer.
It's not ready. I think it's called letter to future wife.
That's going to
Letter
be
to
the
wife.
exercise in the mastermind. The letter to the future wife.
So my friend Elle gave me this prompt on January 13th. She said, write a love letter to your future wife that captures her personalities, qualities, and essence. Be
Ooh.
detailed. So that's a great prompt, by the way. Write a love letter to your future business that captures its personality, qualities, and essence. Be detailed. So this looks like it looks like it's present tense. But it's present tense. Dear wife, I'm listening to the blessing right now, and I'm writing this letter to you because they perfectly capture your personality, qualities, and essence. You are wise. I'm able to come to you with any situation or problem to be able to give interesting insights or nuggets that I haven't thought of. You are independent but want to be connected to me. We have a shared vision of building a generational legacy built on love, truth, joy, and peace. We both want to expand spiritually to grow in love. You come to me for guidance on spiritual learning. I come to you for guidance on your lighthearted nature. You're playful. You always know how to make a joke to lighten the mood. This playfulness always keeps a smile on my face. You come from a great family. You have a strong male role model and you're close with your mother. It's so clear you have strong values. You love to learn, read, and exercise. You're constantly doing small things that make big differences in your own life. Everyone around you describes you as a light. You make the world brighter and sweeter with your presence. You are tidy and organized. You love to surprise me with little snacks and meals. You care about feeding me and the family. Yeah, it goes on, but I've never read that to anyone other than my ex-girlfriend, but yeah, that was first page of it. And
Thank you for sharing that. That's so
yeah,
sweet.
yeah.
That's so sweet. Oh my God. What a great letter.
Thank you. Thank
Is
you. Yeah.
is it something that you read after you've written it, or it's just a one and done thing for you?
It was a one and done thing. And then I met this woman 2 weeks later who was almost a perfect description of this. And I read it to her after.
What do you think is happening cosmically there when we get these 98, 95% matches? Is it the universe kind of testing us, giving us a bit of a partial match to see if we fold or if we hold out for the full match?
Yeah. It would be interesting to reverse it and be like, what would have happened if I followed a genuine intuition I had, right? Like, would a better, would a better match have come through? And I don't know. I assume so. Um, but yeah, I don't know, but time will tell.
Time will tell. I love how you also mentioned you can do this with a business. You can do this with other areas. Maybe I'm just thinking like writing a letter to money, like your relationship with money, writing a letter to, for example, the podcast and how you see the podcast going forward and really infusing it with the perfect vision.
Yeah, I think letters are one of my most underrated tools for personal growth that I don't hear a lot of people talk about, but have been so beneficial to me in my own journey because it forces you to sit with the feelings that you would like to embody, and it forces you to sit with the feelings that if it's a letter to the past version of yourself that you had at one point.
Is
So
there any other techniques you use? I know you've used a folder, like a mindset folder, that's had a big difference on you as well.
I have used that in the past. I don't use that currently, but I think there's such a benefit to being to having something repeated over and over in your consciousness and your awareness, it makes an impact. And yeah, I think in the case of this letter, it was just me writing it once and letting it, whatever came through, came through. I didn't really review it often, and um, I don't have a lot of practices, like, I mean, maybe I do, and I just don't recognize them,
How
but
do you see it? Do you see it as you're flowing with wherever life is taking you?
yeah, like it wasn't a huge deal to just write that letter. It was just what my friend told me to do. And I was like, well, this is a good idea. Uh, and I think following that is going to be as beneficial as anything else, right? Following and trusting that whatever, if I just read that letter and you're like, I should write a letter too, then like do that, take that as a sign. But I don't think there's any prescription you need to, like, if you write this one letter in this way, in this tone, in this, and there are benefits to learning about how someone does it. But I also don't I think you can't get it wrong, is what I'm trying to say.
Got it. Got it. Danny, how are you on time? Because I have a couple more questions, but
Let's go. I love this. This is the most fun I'm having all day.
Beautiful.
And I ran in the rain as a child in the morning, and it was so fun. I meditated with 30 dudes shirtless. It was great.
Amazing. Amazing, bro. So
people run by us and they're like, what is going on here? Like, police officers stop us and like, just go with it,
they want to know what the party is.
Exactly.
So one of the areas that a lot of members in the mastermind are working on is up-leveling their money game and their abundance game. And I'm curious to ask you, like, what are some mindset shifts that have helped you in your money journey, in your abundance journey? Anything that you can share with us?
Yeah, one thing was I started tracking every day, tracking every account, and I'd be like, okay, when in this account, what's going on? What's going on today? What's going on today? What's going on today? So like that was very beneficial for me, the tracking of it, since when I first started going to the gym, it was like tracking my weights and tracking what food I was eating was so important to me. So why would money be any different? If you want something to grow, watch it appreciate, watch it in every day, track it. So that was really helpful. What books or resources? Prosperity Consciousness. I don't talk about this often, but I've mentioned it before. It's a great audiobook. When I listened to this audiobook, I had so many revelations and so many, oh my God. So like one I'll give you guys is like, we have, Prosperity. It's an audiobook and I think you can get it on Audible. One of the things he mentioned kind of blew my mind. He was like, everything that people say and gets repeated in your culture gets stored somewhere. So, there's a saying that you don't take things from strangers, right? Like everyone's heard that saying. If I say that, people are going to be like, yeah, okay, I've heard don't take things from strangers. That is in my awareness, in my field, in my consciousness. Okay. Don't take things from strangers is a statement that you've heard. You also have in your awareness, don't accept money from friends. Everyone's heard this statement, like, oh, I don't take money from friends. Oh, if a friend does that, it's good. If I'm a friend with someone and I do something, you don't need to pay me. It's fine. We're friends. So you have these two things in your awareness. So I had these two things in my awareness of, I don't accept things. When you're older, things becomes money. I don't accept money from strangers, and I don't accept money from friends. And when I looked at this, I was like, oh my God, I'm only accepting money from people in the middle of friends and strangers. Oh my God. Like this totally blew my mind. And I was like, I have been living under that. And is that where that came from? And so that helped me take money from friends and take money from strangers, the recognition of that belief. So yeah, a lot of this is based on the programming and awareness and becoming aware of our own programming. For me, it has been that way.
Because it's so much about receiving and allowing yourself to receive money from friends, from strangers, from whichever source the blessing comes from.
That's right. Being okay with whatever, however it decides to show up, and not blocking it. So
Mhm.
often we're blocking some flow of money to us. And
Have you,
that's what I recognize with that example of like, oh, I just removed those blocks and oh wow, it just started to come, and I
Mhm.
found that really interesting. So prosperity consciousness, highly recommend. It's one where I'll re-listen to it. I've re-listened to it 3 or 4 times at this point.
Wow, amazing. So just having the awareness of those blocks starts removing them.
Yeah, for me, it has
Mhm.
for sure.
What's been your money journey like in the last couple of years? Like, what's been the challenges and the wins for you?
Yeah. Um, so I would say that the challenges have been how can I make money in a way that's aligned with who I actually want to be? That was um there's so many stories popping up in my head. This is great. In 2019, I was making money doing drop shipping and teaching others about drop shipping. Which did you stumble across me in those days?
No, I stumbled across you during the podcast beginnings.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Very cool. So it was 2019. I'm Danny Roars on Twitter, and I'm making, it must have been $15,000-$20,000 a month doing something I deeply do not want to be doing. And it hit me in that moment where it was like, this is not adding up at all. And that's when I kind of burned everything to the ground. So from that point, it was like, how do I make money doing something that I love? And because I know what it feels like to make money doing something I don't like at all, and I'm just putting up with. And it's it's been a lot of surrender, a lot of being scared to surrender, a lot of letting go, a lot of oh, I mean, there was one moment, a story from 2021 where I took a job as an NFT podcast host because I was getting into NFTs at the time. And I, if I really sit with myself, I took it because that's what my dad wanted from me. And so taking that job and realizing how miserable I was in it, and then being like, the reason why you took this is because you were scared of trusting yourself and you wanted your dad's approval was like, thank you. That's what I got that from that lesson. I'm grateful for that. So it's a never ending journey, right? Is what I'm trying to say. And um, yeah, that's kind of little touch on the journey. And I'll go back to like what doing retreats and coaching and how I stumbled upon that was people started to come up to me and they started to ask me questions about the deepest parts of their life over and over and over and over again. And I was like, I'm not qualified to answer this, but I was answering and asking questions to them that was helping them answer. And they were coming to new conclusions that was making them feel more at peace. And I said, I need to start charging for this. And then I did. And then I started to see, oh, wow, this is actually the most in alignment thing that I could do. And I was scared to do it because I was scared of the judgment from other people. This was my gift the whole time. This is what I knew I wanted to do in my heart, but I was scared. And that's okay, you know? So,
Yeah. On the topic of coaching, you help people bring their lives to be more in alignment with the person that they most want to be. What are some things that you find across when you look at all your clients? What are the main blocks that are keeping us from our own alignment?
truth is, as we talked about before, telling the truth, um, being scared to be seen in a certain way or looked at in a certain way. Um, the the perception of other people and the society or the parental figures or the friends who are keeping you in this role and this way of being. That's very common. Um,
That's a big one. That's like when you feel like other people's perception of you is keeping you in a certain character.
yeah,
How do
yeah,
we
man.
break?
Awareness is very important. I mean, I was talking to a friend last week, and he was saying how people in his group chat, he's 31 years old or 32, and people in his group chat from high school are posting people that they went to high school with in their group chat being like, look at how cringe this woman is for posting her comedy on TikTok. And it's like, you hear that enough times. If you have heard that, you then feel like, wow, I can't put myself out there. I can't post my comedy on TikTok because look at all these people making fun of the person from high school. And uh, for me, what's been very helpful is living in a different state, like to get that initial separation. For me, what's been helpful is finding friends who love and accept me regardless. But those are two external. I mean, moving is internal in the sense that you can actually choose that. And I would say like choosing not to buy into that programming and doing whatever you can and fighting back against it if you get that group text message of being like, I disagree or whatever, like by stating your truth instead of being a subtle uh you're subtly agreeing to it implicitly by not saying anything about it. You're saying it's okay that black people sit in the back of the bus when you are not saying anything about it. And it's obviously it's easier to do because everyone complies. And can you stand up in that moment and say, this doesn't align with who the person that I want to be? Because you're not just fighting in some sense for that person, you're fighting for yourself too.
Yeah. Yeah. So truth, being seen, and allowing yourself to break free of the programming.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. One of the books that I gave you some time ago was Busting Loose from the Money Game. And it's a book that's sort of been blowing up in this mastermind as well. And I'm curious
Really?
what you thought of it and how it's affected your perception of reality.
I had so many notes from that, and I ended up getting his mastermind online, which I've not fully completed, but I have a desire to. And it was awesome. And I also felt myself being like, is this true? Like I had that perspective of like, I don't know if I'm fully there. I don't know if I'm fully in this. And I'm somebody who's gonna take people at face value and who's just gonna believe and is gonna go with it. I have the tendency to just go into things and trust. I'm big into trust, but there was some part of me that was like, I don't know if I'm fully there yet. And so I wanted to dive deeper to see and to understand where he's coming from exactly.
I'm laughing because
So
that's the same reaction that some people in this group have been having.
I
They love
believe
the
it.
book, but they're like, I'm not sure I'm quite there yet.
Yeah, yeah, that was me. That was
For me,
me, Richard.
but like when you're reading the book, you're almost on this psychedelic trip where you're like,
Yeah,
what is going on? Is my whole reality an illusion? And it
yeah,
just really goes deep into some existential questions.
it does. It does. And I, yeah, it's one of those books I think you need to apply for some time to see the benefits. Um, but yeah, man. I mean, what was your biggest hit? What shifted for you when you read it?
For me was the concept of the eggs of resistance. So in the book, he describes how your soul plants these eggs of resistance. And so you're being nudged along this path, this treasure hunt. And when you hit up against the resistance in your life, that means you're close to this egg that you've given away, internal power, you've given it away to something external, whether it's been fear of being seen or fear of receiving money or whatever it is. And so when you go straight towards that and apply a process, like he has a process in the book, but there's also other processes that you can use to break free, to crack that egg and retrieve that power back into your center. That for me was a concept that I've really learned and held to.
Yeah, and it's it was really powerful to read that during this breakup because it felt like when you go through a breakup of a business, of a relationship, of anything, of an ending, it feels like in some sense you're taking the power that you gave to that person and bringing it back home. And so that analogy was very useful for me when I was going through this process, when I'm going through the process.
How I mean, this is quite personal, but how has that process been for you, and what lessons did you learn from this last relationship and the breakup itself?
Yeah, I think just that was a huge one. Owning, bringing back my power to self, and not putting a relationship on a pedestal the same way we could put money on a pedestal or we could put fame on a pedestal. I realized there was some part of me that was putting the relationship above it all and letting it supersede my own desires. And it was cool to witness that uh, I could actually own my desires fully, and it could be, uh, and I, that is really where I'm most powerful, when I'm owning my desires fully, and how I gave that away because I put the relationship on a pedestal. So that was really cool to recognize, to learn, to see. And it made me very uh, grateful just to recognize it and have it, that learning. Made me grateful for it all.
Beautiful. You're such a mirror of truth, Danny. I just feel like being in your presence up levels me to be more in my truth. And how do you do that? Like, it's such a fascinating energy that you bring to every call, every podcast, everywhere that I see your energy.
I appreciate that's such a high praise from you, and I'm really grateful to hear that. I just try to live the message that I talk about, and I, to the best of my abilities, show up in a way that is truthful, that is open, that is honest, that is willing to correct myself or give myself place where I'm wrong, right? And if somebody's living in that, you want to live in that too. So if somebody's loving to you, you and you're going to want to be loving. And if somebody is mean to you and repeatedly over and over again, you're going to want to be mean to yourself too. And people can argue that, but if you have the critical voice in your head of your parent, you know that is true. You want to be mean to yourself, or maybe you don't want to be mean to yourself, but you are being mean to yourself because you've been programmed to be mean to yourself for so long. And so what I'm trying to do in every moment is to be loving to myself. And you're feeling that, and you will also want to be loving to yourself when you're in my presence, because that's what we're doing here. That's what the energy of this is, and that's what I try to bring. And I'm so grateful you could feel that.
100%, 100%. Is there any final thoughts you want to share with the group on how to live your most aligned life, or what's been helping you the most in this season of your life?
I would say the two things we spoke about, which is really coming to terms with the relationships with the people that were I was blocked from in some case, which was myself and the guilt and shame I felt around ending the relationship that I thought was right. My relationship with my dad, and yeah, like healing those relationships have been so pivotal for me to bring light back into my life, and to live in alignment. And the loving myself practice, Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It by Kamal Ravikant. There's another plug to read it or reread it, because I've read it 3 times and I'm doing it again and I'm feeling great from doing it. So
can you summarize that practice for those that have not read the book?
Sure. So it is how the practice that I'm choosing to do it with is to just make it the mantra. But in addition to the mantra, there's you can look at yourself in the mirror every day and look yourself in the eyes for 5 minutes straight and just repeat, I love myself. I love myself. I love myself. 5 minutes straight. For a lot of people, that's uncomfortable, but if that's a great sign to lead into it. So that's one. And then you do a meditation where for 7 minutes straight, you just repeat, I love myself. And I think there's a fourth one as well. Breath. I don't know. You have to read the book, but I've just, the way I practice it is repeating it over and over and over again and making it just part of my being. And I'll be in the car and I love myself. I love myself. I love myself. And try to feel I love myself deeply and fully. If I find myself not feeling it, and not feeling it is fine too, but that's what I do. And that's been my journey, and that's how I stay in alignment.
Awesome. Awesome, Danny. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your presence, sharing your energy. Thank you to everyone who attended and brought their light and their energy. Have a beautiful rest of your day, rest of your night, and many blessings to you.
Be well, beautiful people.
You've been listening to the James Xander Trip. That was Danny Miranda. Thank you so much to Danny for joining me in my private community for this potent workshop, for sharing your wisdom, your energy, and your insights. For anyone who wants access to the full library of all the previous workshops, you can join my private community at unlockgodmode.org. That will give you access to the God Mode Mastermind and all the previous recordings. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and let me know what your biggest takeaway was from this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.